Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. I thought of making this video after recently reading an article where they were talking about 15,000 IRS agents are poised to be laid off this week, which I don't know that you're going to see any working Americans that are going to shed any tears over that. I get into that more deeply in another video I made contemporaneously with this one. But with regard to this video, I'm asking the question, should we repeal the U.S. Civil Service Act? And really go back to the bedrock of our Constitution and how our government serves us. And I think this is worth getting into. And I thought of making this video actually while reading an article for another video, but I'm going to go ahead and cite it so you see the context. Article is titled, IRS could lay off 15,000 staff this week during peak tax season, coming from CPA Practice Advisor, that's cpapracticeadvisor.com. Quoting directly, according to ABC News and the Associated Press, up to 15,000 workers at the Internal Revenue Service could be laid off from their positions in the next week. Tax season has just begun, but it may be about to get more difficult for taxpayers and tax preparers such as CPAs and accountants. I always love how this is framed as like, oh, we're going to have less tax collectors, but it's worse for you. Quoting further, the move could also delay income tax refunds. Another one, I think this is all being framed to try to poise some of the more populist elements that have elected the current administration against the current administration, kind of pit them against them. But I think most people are nuanced enough now to recognize that what's going on here, okay, it might be a couple of months I get delayed in getting my refund, but getting our tax service in line so they're not on us like a bunch of parasites and they're not spending money on, I don't know, transgender fish research in the Arctic or whatever it is that they're doing. You know, the quicker we get this stuff in line, the better it's going to be for everybody, basically. That said, quoting further, and I think most people get that. I think, you know, the vast majority of average people get, like, they want their refund, sure, and they think the IRS should go ahead and get on it. My question is, why can't you have your tenured workers handle these matters, which I'll get into here in a minute. That said, quoting further, according to the Associated Press and ABC News, up to 15,000 workers at the Internal Revenue Service could be laid off from their positions in the next week. These are workers who have been recently hired and are most likely to be in lower level positions, such as taxpayer response. So again, the people that are actually paying in the money, the people that are talking to those people, no, we'll cut that. Quoting further, phone centers and junior audit positions who are all on probationary status and lack civil service employment protections. You know, so the point they're making here is they're saying, okay, he's going to lay off all the people that aren't protected by, quote, civil service employment protections, quote unquote, which I'll get into here in a minute. But he's going to lay off all of those people that don't have that, which in my opinion, fine. Whatever you clear out of the IRS and you make it worse for them to operate, the better it is for the average person, the average American who just wants to get on with their lives and make a living and not be hassled by a bunch of stamp pimps and tax collectors and just general parasites just trying to, you know, suck off of them, leech off of them while they're trying to make a living. You know, the people, again, not to go too deep into that side of it, but I'm okay with these layoffs generally. But what they're saying is 15,000 of these people are all coming from sort of the junior ranks that aren't sort of locked into their tenure. Okay? Well, my question is, what's the point of that tenure if not to be stepping up at exactly these moments and doing the job? I would think that would be the purpose. You know, but I doubt that's going to be the case. Which brings me to the issue of, you know, should we just seriously consider repealing the entire Civil Service Act? You know, which brings me over to www.gsa.gov. That's gsa.gov under the title Theodore Roosevelt Federal Building History, Civil Service Commission. Quoting directly, in 1871, President Ulysses S. Grant signed the Civil Service Act, marking the first time that any government jobs were awarded based solely upon merit. And sort of everything that we've dealt with in the civil service is sort of emanated from those early 1870s promulgations of laws around this Civil Service Act. So the question, and then the question poses, well, what was before that? Was it good or bad or whatever? If you're sort of an aficionado, if you will, of high school history, you'll remember from high school that they used to talk about, oh, under Jackson's days, they had, you know, the spoils system. To the victor goes the spoils. Whoever would win the presidency would basically just appoint the entire federal government, effectively. And they said, oh, that's a terrible system. We got to create something where there's merit-based. I always love that, based solely upon merit. Just as an aside, my father back home in Kansas is a judge. He's an elected judge. And he always jokingly refers to himself as a meritless judge, because Kansas has this weird like patchwork system where some of the judges are elected and some are appointed, but the appointed ones are always referred to as merit-based, where it's like, shouldn't the person that was actually elected by the people that they will be dealing with, isn't that person actually arguably more meritorious because they actually reflect the popular will? That's kind of what I've always thought. Generally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of appointments into the federal government because it leads to these sinecures and these situations where people sit in their little fiefdoms and their little perches and just kind of operate with impunity. It is in many ways the roots of the so-called deep state, because these people get in there and they're sort of ensconced and there's nothing that can be done about them. And, you know, politics come, politics go. And here they are. I think in this administration, we're seeing a massive sea change. One, they have the tech to see who's who. They have the tech to see where the funding and things are all going. And I think there's a popular will against all of this entrenched bureaucracy just telling us what to do all the time with a because I say so attitude. We saw that at the heights of COVID. We're still seeing some reverberations of that now. And I think Trump represents, if nothing else, I think he objectively represents a pushback against that notion. And I'm hoping we see serious reform within the American civil service, if not the outright just abolishment of that act. And let's just start again and try something new.